What's going on,
And
everyone?
we are live.
Hi, what's going on, everyone? And of course, as you know, this is your host, Abhishek, and welcome to a brand new edition of the Film Geeks podcast. And yes, joining me as always are Arindam and Anar. And of course, this is a podcast where we'll be talking about not only a movie, it's practically right now, it's an event. It's probably the biggest event of the year. And yeah, we'll be talking about Infinity War. Uh, so before we go on and talk about the movie, I'm pretty sure everyone who is here has watched the movie. Uh, let's just introduce you guys to the panel. Of course, let's go and ask Arindam how he is doing, and probably then we'll go and talk to Anir as well. So how are you guys doing today?
We were okay till 7 p.m. and then we saw that someone did not join the chat on time. So we were freaking out a bit. And finally, thankfully, you are awake right on time. Just 17 minutes late, but it's good enough for us. What about you, Anit?
Uh, I'm in I'm in Delhi right now, so it's freaking hot right now, and it's not even May. It's just about to be May. It's so hot right now. I just don't know how the summers are going to be. So I'm taking this call from the office. I'm using the office resources as I should be. So it's yes. Let's do this.
Like, what sort of an office doesn't give you a holiday on May Day, dude? It's supposed to be World Labor Day. And as you can see, my cat just walked in the background. So anyway,
Hey,
yeah,
no, 1 second. It's offices who think of you as labels. They will give you a Labor Day holiday.
nice. So anyway, I hope you guys are doing well. And so, when did you guys watch Infinity Wars, and what has been the experience with you? Let's start with a very brief initial thoughts about the movie. Let's start with you, Anirban. When did you watch Infinity Wars, and what were your initial thoughts about the movie?
I watched it first day last show. And this, I was very lucky actually because I was trying to book it on Thursday, and the show that was the last show was at 10:40, but I didn't get a good seat for that. Luckily, I checked it after a few hours, and I got a very good seat, and then that was for the 11:10 show. Although it's very late, but what I think about the movie is that it's a fantastic movie. It's something that if you haven't watched, and probably then I don't know which rock you're living under, and you should just go and watch it. Obviously, it'll make you ask a lot of questions. I think I'll have to go and revisit the movie again this week, probably because my first experience in terms of the crowd out here wasn't that great. I reached on time. For some reason, there are no trailers anymore in Gurgaon, the hall that I'm watching it. No trailers. So the movie just starts. You have a few ads, a few really shitty ads, and then the movie starts. The problem is that people were filtering in for half an hour after the movie started, and and the seats that I had were at a place that was very near to the entrance. So anytime somebody walked in, they stopped right in front of my seat with their mobiles on, trying to figure out where the seat was and what the ticket number was. So what the seat number was. So I got really irritated. At one point, I actually told somebody to get the fuck out of my way because you're trying to watch a movie and somebody coming in the way just pisses you off. I think not as much as babies crying in theaters, but equally as irritating. And how was your experience?
Luckily for me, no one at all had seen the movie, and there weren't many smart asses. Every time you go watch a superhero movie, you find these sorts of smart asses who like, hooting and hollering when the moment is appropriate. For me, the mix was just perfect. Even there were babies in the crowd who didn't make like some noise, so you get an indication of how fucking great the movie is. I loved it. It's a culmination of everything that I had imagined it to be. I did not expect it to be this good. If we had set up a poll on the group, if you remember, and it was just awesome. I saw it. I couldn't believe my eyes, like on what they had achieved it, on just getting the balance right, on having so many characters, giving them appropriate screen time, just the screenwriting enough. Like there was a good mix of humor. I think Abhishek might have points against that, but I really liked it. And This obviously where it will land totally depends on the next movie. But till now, it's like the part between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So we have no idea what is going to happen. We were just hit with a bombshell of an ending, and I'm really, really, really excited to see where this goes next.
Right. So what I felt is I'll probably be summing up what both of you all said. I mean, this was a film which was a culmination of 10 years of storylines. This was a film which had a lot in its plate. There were a lot of things which could have gone wrong. And for all the heavy lifting that this movie had to do, I think it did it with a certain panache, a certain sense of. A certain sense of style that we've come to associate with this entire team of filmmakers, and this is something which is unseen. The scope, the scale at which these stories have been told over the past 10 years or so is unseen at this time. This level of storytelling is unprecedented, and this is something which I don't think anyone, if you would have told us that in 2012, and in fact today is the anniversary, in fact the sixth year anniversary when the Avengers actually released in India. So yeah, if you would have told me back then that, after like close to a decade later, this will be not just a film but a huge cultural watershed moment for you, I would have been telling that I would have told you that you're probably smoking some really good shit. But yeah, this is where we are right now. This is a whole event that people are actually basing their entire year or an entire experience based on whatever happens in these movies. And this is something which, like I said, it's unprecedented, and I absolutely loved it. But let's these were our initial thoughts, but let's go and talk about a few things which I really want to discuss with you guys. Let's start with you, Arindam. Let's go and talk about. We'll not get into the plot much because by now we are releasing it on Tuesday. I'm assuming that everyone has watched the movie. It's pointless talking about the story points of the movie. What we're going to talk about are specific points in the movie. Let's go and talk about one of the things which I was very excited for ever since they were a first glimpse of them was shown in D23 last year. Let's go and talk about the Black Order. And what were your thoughts about the Black Order?
Many people, they are having this problem that they were underpowered. I don't see it that way, because if you see, basically, okay, for those who are new or who did not pay attention, because the names of these people were not set out during the movie. It's basically released because we follow around movie news, or maybe you saw them in toys. So there are particularly there are four people who are also known as the children of Thanos over here, and it's the Black Order. We are basically the Thanos' henchmen, you can say. So the big guy, his name was originally Black Dwarf in the comics, but it was changed to be called Obsidian because it sounds cooler, obviously. Who was the big guy who had this weird chainsaw thing, who first fought Doctor Strange and Iron Man in the first fight sequence. Then the creepy, cool guy who was, I think, who was a hit among the audiences was Blackmore. He was sort of the sorcerer. Oh, sorry, it was the Ebony. Okay, Ebony is another word for it.
Wow.
I am technically. Okay, so Ebony Moore was there, and he was the one who mainly faced off against Doctor Strange, and people are having issues with how he was used, and I'll come to that later. The next person, the female that we had on the team, was Proxima Midnight. They just have cool ass names. We have to admit that. I think props to Jonathan Hickman, who introduced them during the Infinity arc in the Marvel Comics. So that was really cool. And the last person was Corvus Glaive, who was the sort of the camouflage guy who was also quite strong. People say that they were defeated quite easily. I do not think so. At any moment of time, at any fight sequences, there were at least three people who they were fighting. So, and these people were very like they were quite good. They were quite adept at what they were doing. They have had 10 years to see what their abilities are, and I think they were not underpowered at all. Uh, of course, you can't give like a screen time or major backstory to people like Culmination. We know he's just a big bad dude who has to be defeated. So, and I love the part that they use Thanos the way they did. He is not just an overpowered bad guy. He's the guy who he mainly uses his brains rather than his bronze. And when he needed to use his bronze, it was made clear. I love that they used the Hulk in the first 5 minutes of the movie. It was just perfect. I loved how the usage of the Hulk and how much he was limited, and he has become sort of a crutch because a person like the Hulk, the way that he's used in the movie, it's best used if it's absolutely like the screen time has to be minimal. If it's maximum, then we get stuff like the Incredible Hulk. So I really liked what the Black Order did and how they were used. Anil, what about you?
Before we start discussing about the Black Order, there's one thing that I want to actually bring to your attention. If you have noticed, if you watch the trailer again, the trailer for Infinity Wars, Hulk is there in his full glory. He's not wearing the Iron Man suit. He's not wearing any of
Hello.
that. Hello. Yeah. So as I'm saying that if you watch the trailer again, what you notice is that we have Hulk in all his glory. But if you watch the movie that and spoilers, if you haven't watched the movie yet, you should turn this off right now. You'll see that Hulk hardly makes an appearance in any of the scenes. It's when I say hardly, it's you those who have seen it know what I'm talking about. So in that way, I think it's a very nice way to sort of not bring him into the picture yet, keep him there and sort of humanize him to a large extent because the Hulk is not a vulnerable hero or it's only Bruce Banner who is the more vulnerable part of the Incredible Hulk. So it's a nice way of doing things. He, and then I don't know if you guys noticed that or not, but coming back to the Black Order, I agree with you. They were not weak, or as some people might think. I don't really think that they were shown or portrayed as weak as creatures. I think they were shown to be strong, as we have seen out there. It was very difficult to take them out, and there are a few things that I did not like about the Black Order. One of them was I think they were underutilized to some extent and also the way that they got rid of Ebony Maw was very silly. I think it's one of the silliest part of the whole movie. I think when uh, Spider-Man just aliens uh, Ebony Maw out of the spaceship. I didn't like that part, but other than that, I think they serve their purpose pretty well. I think they're the children of Thanos, and each of them represents a sort of the strength of Thanos. So in that way, I think we get to see a glimpse of the overall power that Thanos can wield without actually him having, without him being on the screen. So when he finally makes an appearance, you have an idea that if these guys are that strong, this guy has to be way stronger than all of these guys combined. So and which was the case, and in that way, I think they were set up very perfectly.
Before you address that, Abhishek, we've got the first question ever from our YouTube comment section. Amit asks, why did Hulk not come out again? So we'll definitely address that. So Abhishek, you could lead into your Black Order and then come to the question.
Right. See, I'll try to sum it up this way. As someone who's familiar with what the Black Order can do, it was definitely very strange as to how underpowered they were. I actually, have read a little bit of the run where they were actually introduced, and these guys, they are fucking badasses. There is no way that someone can actually stop Proxima Midnight Spear, or you can't just slap around Super Colobsidian, or because the Supergiant was not there in this film, or you can't really fuck around with Corvus Glaive because he's basically he has the powers of Karnak, which is basically he is genetically his basic power is to find out a flaw in every plan, and he is a master strategist. So there is no other way that, especially that stuff. As much as I love the subway scene, because that scene actually drove me to tears because it's so awesome. There is no other way. If it was in the comic books, there is no way that the Secret Avengers are coming out on top. That being said, I would ask Arun. So I was kind of disappointed as to how it ended up. Anyway, Arindam, how about you answer the question? What did you think about Hulk, and why didn't he make an appearance?
What I think is that his ego was hurt. If you remember his character development in Ragnarok, the way things go for him, uh, and what he exactly does, he develops a sort of a personality that uh, I think his ego was hurt in a way. That is why he got beaten like a bitch. Simply, that's all I can say. And he did not want to come out. There might be another reason. It's that I think he may be hurt because none of his friends came looking for him, and Thor was the only one, and he sort of just found his way to Ragnarok, and he was surprised to see Hulk there. And the first thing that Hulk does is he beats up Thor. So that might be another reason why he did not want to help. So this will only be answered in the next movie. I think this is a thread they have left open intentionally, and I'm pretty sure he'll give us a satisfactory answer. What about you, Anil?
Uh, yeah, I don't think there's any other reason why he might not want to turn back uh, into the Incredible Hulk. Why he didn't want to make an appearance. It serves a lot of purposes that way. I don't see if he appeared out there, if it would have made any effect on the overall war, except maybe a lot of people might not have been killed in the battle. But again, when Thanos makes an appearance, all of that goes out for a toss in the end anyway. So it does not matter all of those, but I think all of this is a build up to the next movie. So we've got to wait for the next movie to see what actually they're waiting for in terms of story development and character development, in terms of how Thor is going to be used in the next movie itself.
Okay, and Nitin from the chat asks, what do you think about how they tackled Xandar? I think Xandar was the base for the Nova Corps, right, where the Infinity Stone was kept. I forget which one was it, the Tesseract or the Loki Spear, which was, or was it later? Do you remember, Anil? I think it was the Space Stone, right? I don't think they show. I sort of forget which one was it.
So before he attacks, he already has the Space Stone and the Power Stone, right?
Correct.
So either one of those.
Okay, so I don't really mind that they didn't show the attack on Xandar because it would have been just a generic. Okay, Nathan says it was a power stone. So I don't really think that the problem was with them showing him facing off against the Nova Corps because it would have been just a generic fight. It wouldn't add anything to the movie, which was already 2.5 hours long. And I think they used the time quite right. So I don't have any problems with that.
I just have a feeling about them not showing the war at Xandar. That's probably going to be because I feel they're going to introduce the Nova Corps in Phase 4, and that's where they're going to show the Battle of Xandar, and how probably the movie will start with the Battle of Xandar, and as Thanos goes ahead and tries to reclaim all the Infinity Stones. There we can see how the Nova Corps comes into power, and especially someone like a Dick Ryder or a Sam Alexander takes up the mantle of the Nova Corps, because I honestly feel that Space Force should and will include a lot of the cosmic elements that we've come to know and love from Marvel. That being said, let's go and talk about one. I absolutely love the movie. I think we can all agree on that. That this movie was fucking epic. It was something really, really, really special, and for most parts, it hit it completely out of the park. There was just one part of the movie which I was kind of groaning. I was like, "Oh, for fuck's sake, this again!" Because if you, just in case you did not know, these segments where the Guardians introduce all of their lines, and in fact even the portrayals, that is why the Guardians of the Galaxy come across as completely taken from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1. That is because James Gunn wrote most of their parts. James Gunn actually assisted in directing, especially the parts involving the Guardians. Now when they find Thanos after the destruction of Asgard, or whatever the fuck that vessel was, they find Thanos in space and they bring him onto their vessel. And yeah, what happens after that is kind of cringy. At least I thought, because the humor was okay, but it did not really fit in to especially what the narrative was. Because what was going on then is you had Thanos, and I'm assuming that this is directly after the events of Thor Ragnarok. This is a guy who has lost his birthplace. This is a guy who has lost his father. This is a guy who has lost his hammer. This is a guy who has lost all his people. Why is he joking? It does not make sense. Like I'm saying, I love the humor. Apart from this minor gripe, I loved the humor throughout the movie. It's okay not to be overly serious about certain different things, but that part of the movie kind of did not sit right with me. Let's start with you, Anirban. What did you make of it?
I don't agree with you on there because I think emotions, when you talk about emotions and all that, that's a territory that you don't want to discuss because it's not something that we are experts on. But I do think that humor is best used by people who are grieving. So I don't think that it was very much out of place in that sense. Yeah, it didn't actually. People who are watching it can't relate to it because all of them expect the person grieving to sort of show a very different emotion than humor. But that is what makes it stand out in that sense. You know, when somebody is grieving, when somebody is happy or making fun, when they should be really in tears. I think that's something that you and I don't know or can't comment on. But in that sense, this is, like you said, this is a guy who has had everything taken away from him. So I think how he reacts is, again, that's at his prerogative. We can laugh about it because there's nothing else he can do. All whatever he did, but how he approaches it after that, if you look at it, is very methodical. He knows that he cannot be emotional. So, in that sense, if you look at it, he's not getting emotional. He's not going directly to kill Thanos because he knows he can't take on Thanos directly. So he goes to Nidavellir, and that's the first thing he does. He needs a weapon. He needs a god killer. So that's the first step that he takes. Apart apart from that, I understand completely why they use humor instead of a very somber tone in those segments. So it does make sense for me at least.
What Abhishek seems to forget is just see the character journey, like what he has taken over the better part of what, like 8, 9 years. Uh, since Abhishek mentioned that today was the day when Avengers was released a few years ago, today was also the day 8 years ago that Thor's first look was released. I know that because it came up, like Zuckerberg reminded me of that. 8 years ago, you shared a memory about Thor's costume being revealed. And then I came to realize, like, what a journey this guy has taken. Remember the first movie, how he came across as a brash, arrogant guy who just broods around. He doesn't have any sense of humor. You remember who provided the source of humor in that movie? Uh, the girl from Two Broke Girls. What's her name? Like she was the one. He wasn't at all a funny guy. This is what happened in Ragnarok. He became a total surfer dude, and this was the genius of Taika Waititi. He found a way to make this character interesting. He was the least interesting part of both the movies. The first time he was minutely interesting is when he came up on Avengers and he met everyone. And even then, he was this dark, brooding guy, and Taika sort of mellowed him out, and that is what happened to him. If you remember in Ragnarok as well, he loses his father, he loses his people, but then he sort of gets over it. As he says, he's a 15-year-old guy, a 1500-year-old guy. So it doesn't really matter for him. Mortality does not matter if you have lived for that long and you are facing losses in that magnitude. So I think this shows perfect character development from where we had first seen him and how he is now. He's the most relaxed guy. Just that moment in Wakanda when he comes, man, I haven't seen an audience erupt for any, like, character just popping up randomly on screen. This was just genius. So I don't think that it was forced at all. The humor was there, and I loved how they were used. Also about the humor, when you first see the Guardians, they are again introduced with their signature, songs from the 70s and the 80s going on, and then they bitch and they crib and they quip about it. But when the stakes matter the most, they did not make a joke. When they're hitting Thanos with everything they've got, they know what the stakes are. Gamora is dead, and Mantis is holding on to Thanos and trying to defeat him. They did not have Peter Quill suddenly come up with a joke out of nowhere and ruin the moment. Russos know when to use humor best. If you see Community, you knew what they're capable of, how to introduce action, how to fuse it with humor, and I thought it was very well done.
Right. Since I'm glad that you brought up Guardians of the Galaxy. What did you guys make of the Guardians of the Galaxy? I thought they surprisingly, in fact, let's talk about two facets of this movie. One's Guardians of the Galaxy, and one is Doctor Strange. Now, if you would have told me even at the beginning that Doctor Strange would have a major role, I'd be really surprised because Doctor Strange, in fact, could be like the second lead of this movie because he has the most amount to do. His story is or his arc rather, or his clash with Thanos actually is extremely important to where the story goes, and also because of the fact that he owns the time stone. But I was really surprised as to how much heavy lifting Doctor Strange had to do, and also Guardians of the Galaxy, because this was expected. Guardians of the Galaxy, of course, are the cosmic entities. They have been established in the ongoing Marvel universe. But yeah, even Guardians of the Galaxy also had a lot to do in this film. Let's start with you, Arindam. What did you make of Guardians of the Galaxy, especially people like Gamora, Star-Lord, and Drax, and including Doctor Strange as well? What did you make of their portrayal? How did you find their character arcs, and where do you think that these characters are going forward? Because both the movies have been are in the talks. We know for a fact the Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is coming out, where they'll probably introduce one of my favorite characters of all time. That's Adam Warlock, and obviously Doctor Strange 2 is also in the works. Arindam, where do you see these characters going from here on?
Like you said, I did not expect Doctor Strange to have this big a role that he did. Man, imagine. I just thought that he would be the guy from Ragnarok who teleported them from one place to the other. That would be it. But holy shit, he was so good over here. The way they utilized him, and also people just say that Robert Downey Jr. and him, they were the same characters basically after they came out from Doctor Strange. But once you see them interact, once you see them face off with each other, they're totally different. And I loved how they differentiated it. Doctor Strange is a much more serious character compared to Stark, and it was genius. I love the screenplay for that. I'm not sure who wrote the screenplay. Like, wasn't it Russos themselves? Not sure. I'm not really sure about that. Okay, as Abhishek checks this, I'll talk about the other Guardians. I think Mantis was very well used. I thought that they were piling on members when they added Mantis. I thought she would be just a one and done character, but she played a significantly good role, and they showed that she was just not baggage for the team. She had like actual good use. She had to contribute stuff for the team, and Drax as well. They What I liked is they did not take away the character that James Gunn wrote in the previous two movies. They added to it, like the way that when Drax sees Thanos and tries to rush, so Mantis has to cool them down. So this wouldn't be possible if you would just ham on or pile on some other characters doing it. It was very well executed. So I liked going forward. Since Abhishek says, I'm not sure what they're going to do, since Rocket Raccoon is the only one that is surviving from the Guardians of the Galaxy. I really thought that Star Lord would survive, but he did not. Mantis would survive. She did not. So I don't know, man, where they are planning and what they are planning exactly. I heard that the third part is going to be a sort of a heist film, or sort of a Raiders of the Lost Ark, like multiple parties trying to get a certain MacGuffin sort of thing. So, and Warlock will be introduced, which is certainly exciting, but I have no idea where they're headed with the next movie. They might just kill off everyone and make all this permanent. So I really have no idea, and I'm very excited. to see what they plan to do with these characters.
So what you're essentially saying is that the next Guardians of the Galaxy movie might not be a continuation, but might be sort of a prequel. Is that what you're hinting to?
I think what he's trying to say is the next Guardians of the Galaxy may have brand new Guardians because we don't really have the established characters. I mean, if you look at it from a very business point of view, there's no way Chris Pratt, they're going to get people like Chris Pratt or Zoe Saldana or Dave Bautista out of the Guardians of the Galaxy movie. I'm pretty sure most of these people are going to come back in the Untitled Avengers sequel, which is coming out next year. The question is how, and obviously, if there are casualties, which I hope that there are, I hope there. See, Guardians of the Galaxy. If you are familiar with the comic books, there are whole bunch of Guardians. I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface of the Marvel Cosmic Universe. There's a whole lot of stuff to unpack. There's a whole lot of characters that can be introduced, and if they get some names and they get some name actors attached to said names, it shall be a very very exciting time. But Anirban, that's basically, I thought that's what you were asking. But where do you think the movies are going from here on in, and what do you think is going to happen with Doctor Strange's character?
See, if you remember correctly, this is a very interesting question because there's a point that a lot of people have, right? There's two chain of thoughts. One that believes that this is permanent. Obviously, we know that if you've read any of the Marvel comics, then you know that that is not the case. That is not how the storyline is usually developed by Marvel. There's usually a reversal. If you look at the cast for the next Avengers movie, you'll also know that a lot of these characters who have been presumed dead are coming back. And I know that there's some part that might, so there's certain population that might say that they might be shown in flashbacks. But the whole point is that if you think about it as a standalone movie, that this was the perfect ending and they're still coming back from it. But because we are living in a world where, at the end of the day, all of these movies they are just businesses. We like to view them as more than just businesses because they are more personal for us, but they are businesses. You just don't kill off one of the most successful movie characters in recent time, which is the Black Panther. You just don't kill off Guardians of the Galaxy. This is a really important character, not just in terms of how the public views them and adores them, but also in terms of business. So what I foresee is that they are coming back. Also, if you look at the two school of thought, one is that these guys are really dead, and it was all Chris Pratt's fault, right? Star Lord's fault. The second change of thought is that Doctor Strange actually saw all of this happening, and this was part of his one uh, one future, foreseeable scenario where where the Avengers could pull it off and uh, you you're not kill Thanos but defeat Thanos in a way. So I'm not sure that I believe in the first part. I am more of a second school of thought in which there is a reversal and all of these characters come back, except for the ones who are not killed by the snap, which obviously also contains a huge population, huge number of people.
Right.
Actually,
And yeah.
before you go, there's one question that I'd like to ask. Do you guys think that Valkyrie is dead?
Who?
Valkyrie from Ragnarok, even Korg and Meek. I don't think they're dead, one, because they are huge characters. They were fan favorites. I think they found a way for them to escape. Like Heimdall, he makes the Hulk. He just opens up a portal and makes Hulk go back to Earth. I think they do something similar, or maybe they just sort of escape into space. Valkyrie again, she's very strong. Korg is also made of rocks. Meek, he was already, I think, in a jar or something, so they can survive in space. I don't think they're going to kill them off so soon. What do you guys think about Thanos?
Yeah,
Right.
let's talk about the big bad. Let's talk about Thanos. Thanos, obviously played by Josh Brolin, and this is one. Normally, I'm very skeptical about the casting choices when they first announced to the public, and that I had a similar misgivings about Chris Evans when he was first introduced as Captain America, and I had similar issues when you had. Dave Bautista introduced as Drax the Destroyer, because I can't really picture them as these characters, and now I can't picture anyone else as these characters. Similarly, but strangely, with Josh Brolin, I'm a huge fan of Josh Brolin ever since I watched him in Goonies, and I have loved him in practically everything that he's done, including Jonah Hex. So I absolutely loved that he was cast as Thanos, especially when you saw him right in Guardians of the Galaxy, when you get a full blast of how he's gonna look like. Uh, let's just put it this way: Thanos in this movie is completely different from the Mad Titan, genocidal killer that you know him from in the comic books. He's a completely different character here. In Infinity War, I think this movie is kind of false advertising, because this is not an Avengers story. This is Thanos' story. At the end of the day, it is Thanos' journey, where he is and what he wants this world to be. And if you just think about it for a bit, it actually makes sense. It makes complete sense what he wants to achieve. And he brings us, and here he is not a king, he's not a warrior. Here he is kind of a prophet. He actually brings you, even when he is introduced, when the first line of the movie, where he has Ebony say like, rejoice because you're being saved by Thanos, in his head he is saving people by killing them off. He is giving them mercy. That's what he keeps saying, that this is not death, this is mercy. And I love this very prophetic, apocalyptic, warlock kind of feel that Thanos brought to the role. And obviously, you have Josh Brolin bringing that acting gravitas behind that. I absolutely love this, and I hope that. Obviously, they're not going to kill off Thanos. I hope he serves as the big bad going forward into Phase 4 and Phase 5 as well. Let's ask you, Arindam, what did you make of Josh Brolin and his portrayal of Thanos?
Uh, I would fundamentally like to disagree with everything Abhishek said, because I thought uh, I am skeptical of Josh Brolin's castings in comic book movies. I did not like him in Sin City 2. I did not like him in Jonah Hex. I think the only one that I really liked him in a franchise movie was MI3, where he just perfectly just became like wore the skin of Tommy Lee Jones. He acted exactly like the man. It was I don't think you guys even remember MI3 and how perfect he played like Tommy Lee Jones. It was everything that you never knew
You
you
mean Men
wanted.
in Black 3, not Mission Impossible 3?
I said MI3, right? Oh, sorry, yeah, it's MI3.
Someone use a time stone, please.
Right. Okay, it's a Men in Black 3. It's okay. Semantics. Okay, so another thing that I really liked when Abhishek just said Ebony Moore and how he introduced, didn't it remind you of, for the pro wrestling fans, he was like the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart introducing the big baddie and like how great he was. I got a very pro wrestling vibe from that, so I really like that.
That was a very Paul Heyman thing. That's basically what Paul Heyman does. Because Paul Heyman actually sells. If I'm sorry, I'm going into pro wrestling right now, but Paul Heyman actually sells that. You know what? You know for a fact that you're gonna do shit. You're not gonna stand up to Brock Lesnar. In fact, this reminded me when Paul Heyman actually used to be the manager for CM Punk. When he used to say, like, see, at the end of the day, it's just an honor for you to be in the same ring as CM Punk is, and he's the best in the world, and blah blah. That's basically, if you have to make a wrestling analogy, more than Jimmy Mouth of the South, and more than Heyman with Lesnar. I got a vibe that you can equate this with. What Paul Heyman was when he was not the advocate, but he was CM Punk's associate. Anyway,
Okay,
that's just
yeah, fair enough. That was a very weird tangent for us, but the people who know us, they know this is totally appropriate. Okay, other than that, Thanos, I think they got the character perfectly. He, like I said before, he does not use bronze much. He is the brains of the operation. He knows how to work around. What I liked is that they have a weird father thing going on with all of the characters. And over here, they show that Thanos actually cared for. He wasn't as interested in bashing people up. If you remember when he was facing off with Scarlet Witch and he said, "My child," and he was trying to explain to her in a sort of way, which I found very interesting. They won't just do that with any other villains like previously. Since Killmonger came into the picture, I think they have really addressed the villain problem. And this was one of my favorite MCU villains. I think Killmonger is still number one, but Thanos is very, very, very close. And depending on how the next movie goes, he just might be my favorite. Yeah, I think he was just perfectly used. Thanos, other than that, I don't really have any complaints regarding what he did, why he did everything. It was just genocide, and he was trying to balance everything out. His departure from the way why he does everything. If you for the comic, for ones who do not know him from the comics, he had an origin, or the reason why he collected the Infinity Gauntlet and the Infinity Gems was because he wanted death, like literally death, to fall in love with him. I do not think this would work in the movie medium. And the way they made him a very extreme left environmentalist who tried to achieve his goals however that he pleased, and if genocide was the way, they did this similar same thing with Killmonger. They used this very well with Thanos. So, and he had results to prove. He said, "Look, I'm just not saying that this thing might happen. This has happened to my own planet. Look at Titan around you. This is going to happen. This is an inevitability." So this was very clever writing on their part, and hats off to Kevin Feige to just give the character a push in that direction, and Marvel to have the balls to actually pull it off.
So basically, Thanos is a sustainability champion, right? The champion of sustainability, future energy, resources, and everything, right?
They don't
Have
have
enough food
Galactus,
for.
so they don't have Galactus yet. So better yet, put some of that part in the Thanos.
Yeah, I think it's in some ways Europe they did a very good job, and I think one of the things that did very well was depart from the comics, and it's for the better because what they have done here is they have humanized Thanos to a large extent, and to humanize such a character in the previous movies, wherever we have seen him, you have not seen any hint of that humane side of Thanos. And everybody has been in the dark. If you don't read the comics, obviously you will be you will not even have an inkling. But even for those who read the comics, I think this was a big departure from how Thanos usually operates and his usual MO. And it's obviously what you're talking about is that whatever his motivations were in the comics were, which was to profess his love to the lady dead and make her on make her his bride to be, or whatever it's wanted her to be, but to be with him. But in out here there's nothing like that. I think whatever it does, they make it they not only humanize it but also justify it and make it so much relatable that I have actually met people who have said that Thanos, the motivation behind Thanos uh, are so noble in some way that some people actually don't have a problem with his character motivations. The problem everybody has, obviously, is the way he approaches it. But even then, when you look at it, there is no bias as to he's who is getting to be, you know, not getting to be in the future movies, if you mean. It's just very much free of all bias, and then there's no gender bias, no uh, species bias or anything. So the characters, even characters who are very rare, for example, Groot, they were killed off. So in that way, I think what they have done, Marvel, is I'm glad they took a different route to the comics. They have incorporated elements that were very, I think, essential to Thanos, and somehow wrote everything around that. And yet, this feels like a very big departure from the comics, and yet you feel like it is very much something that is a part of the comic book universe at the same time. So I think kudos to Marvel for that, and I'm really excited to see how they bring it forward because now that the character motivation for this guy is dead, unlike in the comics, now that the character motivation is not there anymore because now you have achieved your goals, how do you foresee a character like that, like Thanos, to progress in the future? So I do know about that. How about you guys? What do you think? How do you think they'll keep Thanos in the picture? Apart from obviously people trying to reverse the effects of the Infinity Stones.
Before that, I would like to address a very silly thing that people have been bringing out, that there's a flaw in the plot line about why Thanos just didn't double the resources. I mean, are you like freaking stupid? Do you not take greed into account? Like every species by nature is greedy. Like if you're a sentient species, you will be greedy. You double the amount of resources, you will run into this problem eventually in the future. So it doesn't make sense if for Thanos to just double resources like water. You will increase like the water or all the rivers in double it just doesn't make sense. It's fucking stupid. I think increasing the resources, doubling the resources just doesn't make sense. And also, it would make for a boring fucking movie if you kill off half the characters. That's much better rather than everyone having a twin.
Let's go back to the peanut gallery here. And Adil says that Doctor Strange saying that 14 million possibilities they win in just once. So him giving up the Toy Stone to save Stark was a part where that is that one possibility where they actually win. I think that kind of makes sense that you had to get that Thanos has to have the Infinity Gauntlet. That's actually what I thought. That the only possibility or the only scenario or the only alternate reality where the Avengers win or Thanos is defeated is the one where he has the Infinity Gauntlet. So that's just me. And this is a very interesting question, which I would like to pose to the both of you. Nitin says, what did Thanos mean when he said, I have ignored my destiny once to Gamora before throwing her off the cliff? Is it a reference from something from the comics? Arindam, why don't you pick this up?
I don't think it's a reference to any comic because they have thrown the comics out of the window. They just
Exactly.
take they just take the like they just use the names and use that as a blank slate. So I don't think it has got to do anything with comics. Ignoring his destiny once, maybe he did not.
No,
If you
no.
remember,
I think it's more simpler than that. And if you remember when he first encounters the Guardians and Tony Stark and Doctor Strange on the planet Titan, he actually shows them the alternate, what it could have been. And he actually says that he had proposed to the government that there was an alternate future, alternate reality where they could have half, uh, maybe sustain the whole planet by genocide, basically committing genocide. But because he was not strong enough to sort of take control and do it himself, he had relied upon others to do that for him. So that was something that he regretted because in the end we saw what happened to Titan as a planet. It had failed. So I think that is what he was referring to when he talked about basically ignoring his destiny once.
correct. Even I was just coming to that, like saying that how he had brought up this basically to the council, and there are parallels to General Zod, don't you think, Abhishek? When they propose there's going to be destruction and they don't let him. So I thought there was a slight parallel to General Zod about him trying to do something that was very uh, that was drastically radical, and they didn't let him, and eventually he becomes the villain.
I
So
think uh, I think that's what makes a great villain. At the end, if you look at it, even if you don't look at things from their perspective, on a grander scale of things, people like Voldemort, it makes sense. People like Magneto, it makes sense. People like Killmonger, it makes sense. And people like Thanos and General Zod, all they want to do is they want to, make whatever environment that they're in, make
make
it
it good.
sustainable, make it better.
Correct.
However, the means which will reach that end is pretty radical and pretty drastic. So probably that's why these villains, among the others, make them more compelling than others, especially in a cinematic universe, be it whatever cinematic, be it DC, be it Marvel, or be it a generic cinematic universe. So I think, yeah. There are obvious comparisons and obvious parallels that you can draw from someone like General Zod and even someone like a Magneto because they are so ingrained in their thought. They are so convinced that they are right. They actually make the audience see their way. And that is actually what makes a great villain. But moving on from villains, and we've spoken about Thanos enough, let's speak about some of the Avengers, and let's speak about the latest inductee, the latest Avengers. In fact, that is Peter Parker or Spider-Man. And what do you guys make of Spider-Man's portrayal in this movie, and his connection and his chemistry with Tony Stark? And let's start with you, Arindam. Let me just tell you. Let me just give you what I thought. I thought this was his. People keep talking about his portrayal in Civil War and how amazing he was at Homecoming as well. But this, in my opinion, he this was Tom Holland taking the role as his own. Let's start with you, Arindam. What did you make of Spider-Man and Tony Stark?
Okay, I think Abhishek's cat is more interested in us talking about Spider-Man. So, see, now if people just say that it was a marketing ploy to bring in Iron Man in Homecoming, obviously it was, but just see how they have used that and that character and to build their relationship. It's amazing, man. Just that line alone at the end where Peter says that I do not want to I don't feel so well, and the look on Tony Stark's face, I don't think he has felt like this or we have seen him this vulnerable ever. Just that moment makes it worth it alone. I think Tom Holland was just perfect as Peter Parker or Spider-Man. This was the one that we deserved. I don't care if you're a Tobey Maguire or an Andrew Garfield fan, but this is the Spider-Man, and it, uh, you know, I don't really mind when we saw the trailers first. He really didn't have his mask on most of the time, and I figured out what the hell this shit again. But it totally made sense in context of the movie. Why care about the secret identity in space? And I like. I know both of you might not have liked how Ebony Maw died, but that was again how the character thinks. Empire Strikes Back, he did that. This time, Aliens. This is exactly what the character does. So I think in that sort of sense, it like generally makes sense. Anil, what about you? I don't know.
Uh, s- yeah, I think you're right in that way. I think uh, all Spider-Man fans who traditional Spider-Man fans might go and like whoever they want to like, but I think in terms of how this character has been built up, I think he fits in much better in this universe than any of the other movies Spider-Man in those movies could have, and he's more age appropriate, and I think in some ways I like him better than Garfield and McGuire, and I don't have any shame in accepting that fact. Even to traditionalists, there's no problem in me saying that because he's done such a brilliant job. I think the relationship that has been shown with Tony Stark has been built up, and we actually see that he cares about Tom Holland to the extent that he thinks of him as his ward, and also in some ways that I think you spoke about how you might not have seen him that vulnerable, Tony Stark. But if you remember in Civil War, when in the end Zima shows him the tape, and he finally realizes that it was the Winter Soldier who had killed his parents. That is when he we see him at his most vulnerable because he realizes that he has to fight Captain America, and he has to sort of defeat him. And he actually goes overboard in that scenario where he tries to kill the Winter Soldier, where he tries to kill Bucky Barnes. So that is the only other time I think we have seen him that emotional. So, and he is an emotional guy. Tony Stark operates on emotions most of the time in the movies, at least. And so, from that perspective, I think this has hit him way harder than even in what had happened in Civil War. So I think it sets it up for a very motivated Iron Man in the next movie when it arrives. So that's a very good tactic on your part. Although speaking of people who just uh, died, I know that some of the people in Europe they made a lot of sense, like Peter Parker going away, just disappearing into the space. Just makes sense. Even a lot of the Guardians make sense. One thing I was really taken aback by was because was by Black Panther's death. It just shocked me to say the least, because at that point you're expecting General Okoye to just disappear, right? I know that I was expecting them that when I was sitting out there, and suddenly you see that's not what happens. That just threw me off. And after that point, even Nick Fury's disappearance did not make that much of an effect, and did not have as much of an effect as the disappearance of Black Panther did for me. So I think that was brilliant on Marvel's part. I think they knew how to shock the audience
You know,
perfectly.
what was weirder and what was more disarming was the fact that he had his back turned to the camera. He wasn't even looking at the camera when he disappeared. And that was probably the first major disappearance that happens. And post that, I think I was as affected during Spider-Man's. But for Nick Fury, when he disappears, I wasn't, because I was more interested in the gadget that he had in his hand. And I was like, holy shit, Captain Marvel, here she comes. So this was like very well done. Like kudos to Marvel, and this also in a way tells you that they are going to come back, because there is no fucking way that you take away Black Panther. Uh, it will be really ballsy if they make Shuri into Black Panther, which has happened in the comics. But I do not think that they're going to do it so soon and make this into the Fallout phase. Maybe if they had 3, 4 movies lined up after this Infinity War, and then they had Avengers, then definitely they would be going towards that route. But they just have Captain Marvel next, and then we're on to Avengers 4, where we'll see what happens.
So there is another question that Ankit from the group had asked, Ankit Goel. So he had asked whether you think that Vision was coming back just because Shuri might have had finished mapping everything that Vision was before she was attacked. So do you think that she finished that process? And because although it might be difficult, but I'm not saying that it will be easy. But do you guys think that that is a very distinct possibility that he might be the first one to come back?
See, what I would like to, I don't know. This is what I understand from what happens when the Infinity Gauntlet is snapped. Uh, to answer for the first of all, to answer Ankit's question is, yeah, I think he'd be the first one to come back. And secondly, if he also did not have the stone attached, and but somehow Thanos got the stone, and but still Vision was Vision. Vision is a machine. I don't really think that it's gonna affect him snapping. Thanos' snapping of the fingers is gonna affect the outcome very much, because what's gonna happen is it's not gonna affect. It only affects living creatures. So he's gonna come back. So if it's not gonna affect him in any which way. But to answer Ankit's question, yeah, from what I understand, and if Shuri is still alive, which I think she is. Vision would be the first Avenger to come back, or at least to have his to be battle ready, so as to say.
By the way, don't you think that the way they portrayed Vision was very disappointing? I thought that he was so underutilized. There's hardly anything. He was like a damsel in distress in the whole movie.
He's as strong as Thor, if you remember from the first part. And they
No,
had,
he's as capable as Thor, which also beatable
yeah,
is.
yeah,
But
correct. He's worthy, and he's also extremely strong. But the first thing that happens to Vision is that he has a blade like driven through him by Corvus Glaive, and he has no idea what's happening. And this is like from that moment he's handicapped, and he is not in control of his faculties. Like he says that he cannot, phase through. He can't use his powers properly. So I think this was done quite well, and also his power usage and why it was limited was understandable. And the way he comes back, I think he won't be as super powerful, because he does not have the Mind Stone with him anymore. But I'm pretty sure that Shuri was had at least a portion of Vision tucked away in the Kanda supercomputer.
Or probably, he decides just to synthesize a living family for him. Gets a son, gets a daughter, gets to synthesize a wife, and go and move in the suburbs and decide that how he how he can take his life forward. Probably that's one movie I'd be really interested in. Anyway, let's go and talk about Easter eggs. There are not a lot of Easter eggs that you can because this movie was so frenetic that there are not a lot of references to future movies with the exception of the poster scene, which we're going to touch on in a bit. But let's just talk about a few Easter eggs. There is obviously the picture of Tobias Funker going around on the internet where he was seen in the collector's den. But let's just talk about one character who makes his glorious return in this film, and that was Ross Marquand from the Impressionists. His portrayal of Red Skull. I was like, what the fuck? Why is this guy here? I actually thought that in this in the island where the Soul Stone was, I thought it was going to be Mistress Death because you saw that Ring Wraithy character. I actually thought that it was either going to be Nazgul or it's going to be a fucking Mistress Death, but it was Red Skull, and I was like, yes, that this is what I want. And well, obviously, he didn't have much to do apart from giving, having that accent where he was imitating Sam Neill trying to do Werner Herzog. But it was a fucking amazing appearance. A little look back at the phase one of Marvel films. What did you guys make of Red Skull's appearance? And do you think we're gonna get, apart from Ronan, who we know is appearing in the Captain Marvel movie, do you want to see any other Marvel villains from the past make an appearance? Because they have been really hard done by. And if this current trend is something to go by, is there some Marvel villain who you would think would come back and would make an amazing impact in the future Marvel films?
I don't think. Sorry. So I'll just. I don't think Red Skull will, apart from being a callback. There's not much that he was impacting in terms of pushing the story forward. So what I think is that he was there because they had to prove to Thanos that you could not get the Soul Stone until unless you had something to sacrifice that you loved. And in that scenario, Red Skull or Johann Schmidt, he personally did not have anything that he loved so much that he could have sacrificed, which is why he was stuck there, uh, desiring the Soul Stone without ever, getting access to it. So he's there just that is why he's there. That's his job, to guide other people towards the Source Zone and tell them that if you don't sacrifice something. So in that sense, yeah, I think I don't foresee any further role for him. But yes, some of the other people villains have been hardened by, but I don't think there's too many of them that deserve a callback. I think apart from Ronan, do you think that there is somebody else, maybe Malekith, who might uh, who might have been hardened by? But I know you don't agree, Abhishek. But if you look at villains, a lot of villains, even Caecilius, right, in Doctor Strange, right, that's one character who could have been strong, but ultimately wasn't. And a lot of other characters. That was the whole Marvel villain superhero struggle that they had in the past. But what's the point of bringing somebody like that back? He's just trying to rehash something. It's good for a callback, but I don't think it's good for reinvention. I think it's better to have new villains that you reintroduce, that you develop from the ground up, like they did with Thanos, or somebody like Killmonger, which they developed very brilliantly. I think it's more apt for them to do something new rather than go back and revisit this old villains.
I'm interested to see, the tone that Captain Marvel has. I think it will be much more serious considering who the character is, and they also have serious parts because the original Captain Marvel, who was going to be portrayed by Jude Law, has to die, and then the mantle goes to Carol Danvers, who of course is said to be her power is said to be more than anyone's whom we have seen till now in the MCU. So it'll be really, I don't know, man, what to expect. I don't want any villains to come back. Other than that, Ross Marquand, I think he did a pitch perfect impersonation of Hugo Weaving. I was like, damn, Hugo Weaving actually came back after dissing MCU, and then in the credit scene, you see it's Ross Marquand, whom I really, really recommend you guys just go to YouTube and type Ross Marquand. He doesn't even say words, he just changes his face, and he utters noises, and that's how he impersonates people. It's like micro impressions. I think he's the only few people in the world who can do such a perfect thing other than Jay Farrow. So I really liked it. I loved how Red Skull was introduced. This was just Marvel's way of saying that you've stuck around with us for about 10 years and this is how it pays off for you. And for the ones who remembered who this character was, how he came to be over there, it was such a damn good payoff, man. I just loved it. Uh, First thing that came to my mind when I saw the Nazgulish creature was like, holy shit, they have Warlock, or maybe no, because Warlock is it's kind of a good guy. It may be Magus, who is his negative zone version of, but it wasn't him. And when he takes off, it just took me by surprise. I had no idea it would be Red Skull, and what a way to bring him back. We had absolutely no idea he was coming back. And coming to Ronan the Accuser, I don't see how he's going to be used. It's maybe funny because the way that the character died, nobody expected there to be a dance off, and I don't expect the Guardian Stone to carry over. I think it's going to be much serious, and I think Ronan's portrayal, I think no one gets a second chance. At least no one has, other than heroes. This is the first villain that is getting a second chance in the MCU, and I hope he's better portrayed. And Lee Pace is a great actor who can be utilized to such a great degree.
Well, if you remember Guardians of the Galaxy, it was established that Ronan is a terrorist. I think Captain Marvel, I think his portrayal would, or his storyline would actually show where or what reasons that this guy became such a terrorist threat. I think that is where they're going with this. But if you ask me, there are two guys I really want to come back, and probably one guy is because his story was just left there in the middle, and that's Baron Mordo from Doctor Strange. I just want to see what happens with that guy. And one guy who I really, really, really like, and that's just a personal preference, and that's Crossbones. I really want to see what happens with Crossbones because, as you can, he's augmented any which way. He has these mechanical stuff going on, and there's been hinted that he has some semblance of the secrets of the Captain America's super serum in him as well. So I would be really surprised if that was the way they decided to kill him off in Civil War. Then I would be really, really, really glad if he comes back in the future Captain America or any other Marvel movie. That these are two people I really want to see back. Crossbones
So
more than
one more,
anyone else.
one more thing, since you said terrorist, I just came to think of it. This might be a possible spoiler for Captain Marvel, and this is a way in which they can make Ronan the Accuser to be a more menacing entity and make Guardians of the Galaxy 1 much more better. Uh, in the books, Captain Marvel, there's like he's one of the few characters who has remained dead till now. And the way he dies is that there is a sort of a terrorist attack, you can say. There's a
Yeah.
nerve gas which he gets exposed to. And that may be the character. Ronan the Accuser may be that character who poisons Captain Marvel. And eventually he contracts cancer and he dies. So this is quite a good way in which they can utilize Ronan and make him to be a much more interesting character. And have his impact on the cosmic verse.
So if anyone from Marvel is watching this, you're welcome. Anyway, let's go talk about the ending because we're nearing the end of the podcast. Let's go and talk about that ending. I know we've hinted on it before, but let's go full blast and talk about that fade to black. I have I don't know, since even at the end of Empire Strikes Back, there is that shot of them in the Millennium Falcon, the twins and the Lando and Chewie looking at the future, But this is just black, right? And you know how it is, and it's just emptiness. And I don't really, and it's very rare for someone like me, and I can speak for Arindam as well. We, because we read a little bit of comic books and we know where most stories can lead to. After the end of this movie, I had spoken with Arindam, and we don't really know. I mean, there is no way that we can say for sure as to where these stories would get to. Uh, uh, because this is just the genius of the script, which was written, by, of course, by Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely. These are the same guys who wrote Chronicles of Narnia, and they were also involved with Thor: The Dark World, the darkest timeline of the Marvel movies. Fucking garbage. Anyway, so this is where we are at currently, and as you guys know, Infinity War, the sequel or Avengers 4 is already done. But what did you guys make of right that end where everything just turns to dust, ashes to ashes, fade to black? Let's start with you, Anirban. Was this in modern cinema was this the greatest cliffhanger ending of all time?
Yes. If you just want one word and answer, it's yes. It just took everybody by surprise. Not just because of the way they executed it, but the scale of things and how unexpected it was in terms of who they were killing. And each moment after he snapped his finger, when Thanos snaps his finger, you are at the edge of your screen because you know that any moment it is Steve Rogers who might disappear, it is Tony Stark who might disappear. You just don't know. And you're looking at this character just disappearing into the wind, and you're just thinking out to yourself, who's next? And then you just, as I said with the Black Panther scene, when he disappears, it just takes you by so much surprise that all of these characters are just being killed off indiscriminately. And it's just very hard to process. It is why, which is why when a lot of the people who were shouting before that, there's somebody who actually shouted, "Nahi, not him, man." There's somebody who the audience who actually shouted out loud, "No, no!" And after that scene ended and the post credits went by and everything is gone, you're walking out and you realize that there is a lot of silence. There's a lot of silence in the way people are not talking about the movie, not talking about the ending, because everybody's still in shock. Everybody's still processing all of this. And to be fair, I think I'm still processing it mm, after the weekend. I've had time to think over it, mull over it, and I think I'm still in shock with the way that things have ended. And this is really the most brilliant thing that Marvel has done till date, because now are there's so much expectations in terms, not just expectation, there's so much that you want from the next movie, because you know that there's there's a certain way that you approach story writing, and which is at least in superhero movies, which is that good always prevails. That is the usually the baseline. And if that's the way things are going to be, how do you approach that? How does Marvel approach that? And I think this, if this movie is as big as it is, the next movie is going to be even bigger, just because people are going to be very, very curious about how they have ended, how they're going to progress this forward. So in that way, yes, this is one of the best cliffhangers that has been shown in recent years, and this has automatically guaranteed that the next movie is going to make much more money in pre-bookings than the Infinity Wars movie did. Absolutely.
I think the last scene especially showed us the genius of Alan Silvestri within the score. If you recall, what was playing in the background, it was just wind. And I think it was a conscious decision on both the Russo brothers' part and Alan Silvestri's part that, let's not have score over there. Let's just have wind blowing because we know how people are going to react. And I definitely saw that. People were crying in front of me. People were absolutely shocked. They were stunned. They couldn't believe, like Anil said, anyone was dying, and the moment that Black Panther died, like the stakes were off. Like anyone could be next. And I did not realize it till I read the comments on the group that it was only the original Avengers who survived. Because the shock value was so much, I did not keep an account. I was just seeing people getting killed off rapidly, and this takes balls, man. You have a $500 million movie that you made, and you end it in a way in which it is not satisfying. I, for one, was for the last 20 minutes at least, I said this, like I was thinking to myself, this just can't be resolved just like that. They actually going to do it? Like the anticipation was building up, and what happened when the screen faded to black was that there was silence, and I was the only person who was clapping because in a sadistic sort of way, I am a sucker for depressing endings. I love sad endings. One of my favorite endings in a movie is Repo Men, where Jude Law, he realizes that everything has been a joke. He does organ transplant on his girlfriend using artificial stuff, and it's very depressing. And just because of some endings, I love a movie even more. And this was nothing short of perfect. I will still remember There's still, maybe I die, that I was there and I saw the moment where the theater was shocked. The entire world, in fact, is still shocked by the fact that how could such a major franchise like end off it's one of a tentpole movie, one of the biggest events of the year, like killing off every character that you have loved. This was just like I don't think like Abhishek said, yeah, Empire Strikes Back has that hopeful shot at the end. This one did not. This one had like yours fucked. Like everyone you love is dead. Like just go back home. There's silence. The credits didn't have any music, and then we see Captain Marvel appear on stage, and then there's that glimmer of hope in the end with that a little music later. That was just perfect.
Yeah, let's just talk about the end credits, where the end credits. Of course, there's just one end credit movie in the movie, and the end credits is Nick Fury gets turned to dust. Maria Hill gets turned to dust, and before Nick Fury gets obviously dusted, what he does is he hits on a pager. Now, what I'm assuming is this pager linking Captain Marvel to the past, in the sense that Captain Marvel is not in this current timeline, that they are actually accessing Captain Marvel from from probably back in the 90s, because that movie is set in the 90s, and probably this is the time where she has to come back to the current timeline for some weird reason, and that's the only way through and through uh, you know
I,
through
you know, what
a
happens
time
is that
device
I don't
that she
think
can be
this
brought
is
back into the reality.
I don't think this is a time traveling pager signal. The main reason being 1.21 gigawatts weren't used for the generation of that signal. This, I think it's frankly, it's stupid that you make a signal, a pager send text messages to the past. I think she's probably handling Skrull Kree affairs somewhere in space, and they make a deal in which Nick Fury only calls her back in case of problems like this. And the thing is that they used the pager because that was the technology then. Obviously, he could have sent an SMS to her, which would go to a pager if it was just happened to have time travel involved. This would be a little silly considering time travel is involved and Doctor Strange is not in the picture. So I really think that this was just a souped up little pager that could send intergalactical messages. It's as simple as that. I don't think it's time manipulation.
But if it is like that, so I just thought about this. If it is like that, just consider this scenario. If she's taking care of some other business, when half the fucking universe disappears, you don't need a pager to tell you that something is off. Because when you're fighting somebody and half the enemy disappears, or maybe even more than that, you don't need some sort of signal to tell you that something big is going on, and you're supposed to go and investigate. So I don't see that scenario where she's there in the current timeline. Probably, I think I'm more in line with what Abhishek is trying to hint towards. I think there is more distinct possibility that she might go back, that the page is meant to be communicate with the past. I think it makes much more sense. But then again, I'm done with theorizing over Marvel because they've just blown away all of us with and one scene. They've just blown all of us away.
Whenever I hear theories like this from now on, I'll just say, you remember all your theories about the Soul Stone and how it was in Wakanda and how it was here and how it was there? Like, just shove it up your ass, man. None of it makes sense anymore. And Marvel will do what Marvel does, and we will pay and to watch them during the first weekend itself. I can't wait for Ant-Man and the Wasp. I want to see them tackle this. Like, mid-high, suddenly you see people disappearing. Maybe this is how they're going to, Peyton Reed will use this. Who knows, man? This is like a brand new vortex just opened up in front of us. Anything is possible right now.
Right, and so that does it, in fact, for this edition of the Film Geeks podcast, a live podcast. And I apologize again for all our listeners who had to wait for at least 15 minutes before I decided to come online. That was not me trying to do anything weird, it was just me just figuring stuff out. We had some technical issues and we got that fixed. Anyway, thank you very much for your time and your patience. And In case you guys like what we do, and in case you guys want more reviews, in fact, it's just summer time, and obviously there are huge summer releases coming out. We'll be trying to review all of the great big summer releases. Next up, of course, is Deadpool, and post that is the solo Star Wars movies coming out, and there are some amazing films that are coming out over the next few months. We'll try to review as many of them as possible. But that does it for now. That does it from you, from me, Abhishek, and of course. My comrades and cohorts, Anirban and Arindam, and for all the people who are on the Film Geeks podcast page, we will be going live in around about another 20 to half an hour, and we would love to have you guys online, and we'll talk more about phase 4. We'll talk more about the fallout from Infinity War, and we might even talk about some movies that we've revisited in the near past, including Ready Player One, a movie which I really have very strong opinions about. So that being said, thank you very much for listening. Have a great day, and may the force be with you always.